You might be making these 10 grammar mistakes without even knowing it. My name's Michael. I'm an English communication coach, and it's my goal to help you speak English confidently, clearly, and fluently. Today, we are going to look at 10 very common English grammar mistakes that sometimes even advanced learners make. We've already talked about pronunciation in a previous video, so today we are going to focus on grammar. All of these mistakes might sound really small, but if you make them, you won't sound natural. So it's really important to learn how to avoid them. I always like getting straight to the point, so let's dive right into the first mistake. Number 1, never say I live in US or I live in UK. Now, this is a really common mistake, even for advanced learners. You might be looking at this and wondering what's wrong. And the thing to remember here is we have to use the word the. We have to say, I live in the US or I live in the UK. The US and the UK are abbreviations. And in front of abbreviated country names, we have to use the word the. But for country names that aren't abbreviated, we almost never use the in front of them. So you just say, I live in America, I live in China, I live in France, I live in Egypt, etc. You don't use the word the in front of these countries because these aren't abbreviations. The only exception to this rule is when we have country names that are plural, like the Philippines or the Netherlands. Since these countries are plural, we need to use the in front of them. So we'd say, I live in the Netherlands, or I live in the Philippines. If this is confusing, here's a chart that will hopefully help clear things up. Remember, when you have abbreviations like the US or the UK, or you have plural country names like the Philippines or the Netherlands, you have to use the in front of the name. But for most other countries, you don't use the word the. All right, the next mistake on our list, never say the people is or the people does. In English, the word people is plural, so we need to say the people are or the people do. I know in a lot of languages like Spanish, people is singular, but in English it's plural. The singular of people is person. One person, two people. This also applies to the phrases there is or there are. We would say there is one person, but there are two or more people. There is used for singular nouns and there are is used for plural nouns. Moving on to the next mistake, let's look at the difference between much and many and less and fewer. We use much or less with singular or uncountable nouns. And we use many or fewer with plural or countable nouns. For example, I don't have much time, or I have less time than you. Time is, for the most part, an uncountable noun, so we need to use much and less. There are many dogs here, but there are fewer dogs here today than yesterday. The word dogs is plural. There's more than one dog, so we have to use many or fewer. Now, when it comes to less and fewer, you might actually hear native speakers using less for plural nouns. For example, it's really common to hear a native speaker say something like, there are less people here today. But this is actually not correct. Since people is plural, as we've already seen, you need to say there are fewer people here today. So remember, with plural nouns, always use fewer, especially if you want to speak English better than a native speaker. So now we've seen the differences between much and many and less and fewer, but I want to show you two other words that follow a similar pattern. Another and other. We use another for singular or uncountable nouns, and we use other for plural or countable nouns. For example, let's meet another time. Time is uncountable or singular, so we need to use another. There are no other possibilities. Possibilities is plural, so we need to use other. I'll give you a couple more examples. Is there another day you'd like to go? Do you have any other plans for the week? I asked another teacher my question. I like visiting other countries. Now, I want you to stop the video, look at this chart, take a screenshot, do whatever you want with it, but hopefully this should clear up any questions. All right, let's look at mistake number 5 on our list. If you've been learning English for more than a few months, you've probably heard about past simple and present perfect. It's really common for students to use the past simple when they should actually be using the present perfect, and vice versa. So how do we know when to use the past simple or present perfect? It's actually not very difficult. Here's a good rule to follow. If we know the specific time an action happened, we use the past simple. For example, yesterday I went shopping. But if we're speaking generally or about more than one time, we use the present perfect. For example, I have been there many times in my life. Let's look at some more examples. Have you ever been to London? On my birthday, I decided to go out for dinner. I've had the flu twice in my life. Last year, I had the flu. In these last two examples, when you're speaking generally about your life, you need to use the present perfect. I have had the flu twice in my life. But when you're speaking about a specific time, in this case last year, you need to use the past simple. Of course, there are a few other uses of the past simple and present perfect, but that's a topic for another video. Most of the time, just follow this rule and you'll be okay. Now, before we continue, don't forget to subscribe if you're finding this video helpful. You can also connect with me on Instagram and TikTok. My username on both is English at the Ready. If you want to learn more about how you can improve your English this year, go to www.englishattheready.com or click the link in the description below. With that said, let's get back into the video and look at mistake number 6. Make sure not to use the word explain incorrectly. Students often say, "Can you explain me this?" But this is completely wrong. And it's wrong because you explain something to someone. We need to say, "Can you explain this to me?" Don't forget the word to. Let's look at some example sentences. The teacher explained her answer to the student. Can you explain your problem to me? You'd better explain to her why you left. So don't forget, we explain something to someone. Without the word to, the sentence is grammatically incorrect. Another common mistake that students make is confusing the words for and since. Thankfully, if you follow this simple rule, you'll never make this mistake again. We use since when we're talking about the starting point of an action. I've been living in New York since 2010. I started living in New York in 2010. The starting point was 2010, so we have to use since. Now, we use for when we're talking about duration. That is, how long something lasts. I've been living in Toronto for 5 months. How long have I been living in Toronto for? 5 months. That's the duration of my time in Toronto. So we have to use for. I've been living in Toronto for 5 months. Let's look at some more examples. I've been studying at university for 3 years. I've been studying at university since 2020. I've been working here for 2 weeks. I've been working here since the beginning of August. So remember, we use since when we're talking about the starting point of an action, and we use for when we're talking about the duration, which is how long something lasts. Now, on to our next mistake. And this mistake is one that even native speakers make. Never say, "I didn't see nothing," or "I didn't know nobody." When you have not and nobody or nothing in a sentence, this is called a double negative. And unlike many other languages, in English, double negatives are grammatically incorrect. Even though native speakers sometimes do talk like this, it's actually wrong. The correct way of saying this is, "I didn't see anything," or I didn't know anybody. Now I'm going to give you a very easy trick to turn a double negative into a grammatically correct sentence. You have a sentence with a double negative like I didn't see nothing or I don't know nobody. All you have to do is take the no in nobody or nothing and turn it into any. Nothing becomes anything and nobody becomes anybody. Again, even though native speakers sometimes do use double negatives, they're not actually correct. So I would recommend you don't use them. Now, moving on. When you have a verb that follows a preposition, you need to use the ing form of the verb. Often I hear students saying, before go to work, I like to exercise. Or, I'm thinking about eat dinner early today. This is completely wrong. You need to say, before going to work, I like to exercise. Or, I'm thinking about eating dinner early today. Before and about are both prepositions. So we need to use the ing form of the verb after them. In this case, going and eating. Here are a couple more examples. I'm thinking of leaving the office at 9 p.m. After exercising, I like to shower. Now, just a quick reminder, what is a preposition? Prepositions are those little words like for, about, before, after, around, and against. There are so many prepositions and I don't have time to talk about them in today's video, but if you're interested in learning more about them, it's possible I will make a video on this in future, so let me know in the comments if that's something you would be interested in. The last grammar mistake on our list is actually one of the most common. Never say, I'm going to home, or I'm going to downtown. This is not correct and it sounds very unnatural. When we're talking about going home, which is the place you live, or going downtown, which is the city center in North American cities, we never use the word to. We just say, I'm going home or I'm going downtown. Now, a student recently asked me, Michael, I've seen the word at before home. At home. Is this correct? And can you say at downtown? So yes, you can say at home, which means you are currently at home right now. For example, I'm staying at home the whole day. Now, you cannot say I am at downtown. The word downtown is always used on its own without any words before it. So you just say, I live downtown. To summarize, I'm driving home. I'm driving downtown. I'm staying at home, or I'm staying home today. I work downtown. I'm sorry if this is a bit confusing, but I didn't invent the English language. This is just the way it is, and you will have to memorize these 4 expressions. Thankfully, it's not too difficult, and if you spend a bit of time practicing, it won't take long to become familiar with them. We have looked at 10 very common English grammar mistakes that you might have been making without even knowing it. Let me know in the comments if you were making some of these mistakes. And of course, if you found this video helpful, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel English at the Ready for more lessons. If you want to improve your English this year, go to www.englishattheready.com or click the link in the description below to learn more. You can also connect with me on Instagram or TikTok. My username on both is English at the Ready. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.